correct me if I'm wrong or even if I exaggerate, but couldn't be harder and couldn't be more difficult.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't think anyone would say they enjoy it, but there is satisfaction to be gained out of doing your job well.
Yeah.
And this is a core part of the job.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one of those areas where people say, I don't know how I would ever have got through that experience without the assistance of professional X.
Yes, that's true. You do get a lot of positive feedback afterwards. And my view of it is if you've been looking after that patient, it's really important to see it through to the end. Because you may well be the professional that develops the best relationship with.
And also, what I wonder is, if most people get heart failure when they're in the mid-70s, do you ever get the sensation that your position is analogous to a midwife? And what I mean by that is that you are making easy an experience which is perfectly natural and in one sense healthy.
Of course, dying is natural, and it should be seen as, in those terms, it's not a failure in any sense.
I know you're avoiding the word healthy.
You can have better deaths or worse deaths, that's certainly true. I think the difference is that none of us know when death should occur. There's no should to it, really. And a death at 80 might seem natural, but actually that patient might, without their heart failure, be living much longer. Conversely, any caseload, you have many people who are dying a lot younger. Right? Somebody in their early 20s only a couple of weeks ago. And that's never going to be the same for the people who are left behind, because they can't say, well, he had a good innings, or any of those cliches.
So, I mean, in some sense, therefore, every last one of your patients is dying. But as a proportion, how many of your patient list is entering the dying phase now? 10%, 20%?
That's a good question. We do actually divide up our patients, basically for management purposes, but to look at patients who are stable, on full treatment, patients who are stable and still in the process of being optimised. And then we also have a group who are unstable, and these are the ones who you would expect to die, possibly, although some from the other groups will, of course, as well, without unexpectedly. Put a figure on it, it all depends which patients you concentrate on, but I would say my caseload, which is quite an extensive one, probably between 5 and 10% of that.
One last thing before we start. Do you ever feel that the exposure to this degree of sadness and this degree of tragedy, do you ever feel as though it has a personal cost on you, or do you think that it contributes positively to your development as a character?
That's a really interesting question. I think if you'd asked me about 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to answer like I would now. I think now it does. And I think that's part of
what cost you or contribute?
No, contribute. I think if I'd been doing the role 10, 15 years ago, it wouldn't have been something I could be comfortable with. Conversely, moving out of critical care areas, I don't think I'd be comfortable going back to those areas now. For the same reason, I think I would feel that we weren't doing the best possible job in this regard, the care of the dying.
Well, at least a sudden cardiac death has the virtue of being sudden.
Yes, you would normally lose consciousness within a couple of minutes, and you would normally have permanent brain damage very shortly afterwards and be completely unresuscitatable.
And if this is a process which is taking place in ours death, the chances of it being even temporarily reversed is pretty remote.
Well, ours are better than some places, because most of the supermarkets now have automated internal defibrillators in.
Still in all, out of hospital cardiac arrest is pretty low order recovery.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you look at the total figures.
Yeah.
And even in hospital, there's a huge. The overall figures are something like 20%, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but it's roughly that order. But that hides a huge variation. If you have a cardiac arrest in a CCU or an ITU, the chances are reasonable. if you have that middle of the night shift on a rehab ward, I would suggest your chances are going to be hugely lower.
Once you've hit the pump failure stage, though, the irreversible pump failure stage, the cascade of events that take place means, the word that you've chosen in this chapter is that palliative care is now mandatory.
I believe so.
It's hard to disagree, isn't it?
Yeah.
The list of things that you bring out, the metabolic changes, the renal collapse, the change in consciousness level, really basic humanity demands that these questions are addressed.
It does, and it's fundamentally no different to dying of cancer or any other terminal condition. The cascade of events is, there's differences in emphasis between different conditions, and some things are more of a problem for some patients than others, but it's the same process. It's the organs failing. That's what's happening, and that's what you have to address.
You've listed some of the symptoms that really need to be got on top of, and it's a pretty depressing list, isn't it? It reads uncomfortably, never mind experienced.
It does. I think you've got to be aware of all of these. Unfortunately, not all patients suffer from all of this, and particularly if you're getting your palliative care in place, often the suffering can be minimised to a very low level. A lot of people die reasonably comfortably, in my experience.
What about itching? I know you've got itching in the list there. Is that common?
I think it's probably a little more common than we realise, because I think we often fail to inquire about it, and people often just put up with it. We have to remember that in heart failure, one of the organs that often fails as a consequence is the liver. And as I think we all know, that when your liver's failing, problems with itching do become prevalent.
Whereas there's innumerable substances to deal with